Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you all for joining us this evening. Jody, could you call the roll?
Dennis. Harold.
Here.
Hollenbaugh.
Here.
Musgrave.
Here.
Odoricio.
Here.
Phipps.
Here.
Robinette.
Here.
Okay. The minutes from our January 21st meeting were distributed for you to review prior to this evening. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Jody, do we have any correspondence?
We do. We have two items this evening. First, we have the financial budget summary report for the month of December 2024, which was distributed to council prior to this evening's meeting and is noted for the record. And second, the mayor is requesting confirmation of an appointment to the Transit Advisory Committee. The appointment is for Barb Markin to serve through May 31st, 2028, with the appointment being effective immediately.
Do I have a motion to approve the appointment? I move to approve the appointment.
Second.
Okay, properly moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Welcome aboard. Is that all?
Yes,
Do we have lobby visitations this evening?
we do. Jim Evans.
Jim Evans, 203 Buttonwood Avenue. Good evening. I'd like to speak again on behalf of the Bowling Green Climate Action and Resiliency Improvement Plan. As one of the authors, I've been asked by several people, including one member of City Council, if I could prioritize among the many actions the city could take with regards to achieving the goal of net zero carbon emissions and the goal of improving resiliency, meaning mitigation efforts to protect people, property, and critical infrastructure. Accordingly, I have attached a prioritized list of 10 actions I believe the city should take. Tonight, I will limit my remarks to the number one priority item on the list, which has gained urgency because the city is moving forward with planning and designing one or two new fire stations and renovating the police building. The Climate Action and Resiliency Improvement Plan proposes that the city construct new fire stations and renovate the police building for two separate reasons. The first reason was to improve the energy efficiency of government buildings. Items that were discussed in the report include installing reflective roofs, high-efficiency HVAC systems, improved insulation, high-efficiency doors and windows, electric vehicle rechargers, and also reducing energy costs with native landscaping, the use of green infrastructure, recycling water, etc. The second reason these public buildings are mentioned in the report has to do with their potential role in hazard mitigation. Items that were discussed include the following. These buildings should have safe rooms that are structurally competent to act as tornado shelters, protecting critical first responders. Second, the buildings should be designed to assume future roles as resiliency centers. This means during a heat wave, the buildings could serve as cooling centers. During a winter storm, the buildings could serve as warming centers. Or in the aftermath of a flood or a tornado, the buildings could serve as evacuation centers. To fulfill these potential future roles, the buildings need to have backup power and water supplies, be capable of storing, preparing, and distributing food and water, be capable of providing shelter and basic level medical care to displaced residents, and have redundant means of communication. To remain in operations, the building should be flood-proofed. This means ensuring the structures and utility connections are above projected flood elevations, ensuring that furnaces, hot water heaters, and other tanks are secured, installing flood shields, which are heavy screens over windows, and installing bulkhead doors to prevent flood debris from breaching into the interior of the building and installing sumps and sump pumps as needed. The city of Bowling Green is particularly vulnerable to tornadoes. If a tornado proceeded west to east down Wooster Street, as one actually did on Easter morning of 1920, it would destroy the police station, both fire stations, the hospital, the city building, and the county buildings. So at least one of these new fire stations should be located off-axis from this threat, and that building should contain a specialized communication facility that could serve in the utmost emergency as an alternative command center for city operations. In addition, for obvious reasons, the new fire stations should not be located adjacent to the railroad tracks or I-75. Now, after I wrote that, I realized the reasons might not be obvious, so I should tell you that according to the Ohio Emergency Management Agency, one of the threats to the city of Bowling Green is a hazardous waste spill either due to a train car derailment or a heavy truck accident on I-75. The use of public buildings as resiliency centers is a national trend in the face of the accelerating climate crisis. This role needs to be addressed and acted upon during the design phase of these buildings. It is expensive and often impossible to retrofit these features. As an example, this new city building we're presently in, which was built at great expense, has no tornado shelter. There's an additional education phase that needs to accompany these mitigation strategies. The public needs to know well in advance which buildings serve as resiliency centers and what to do and where to go in a crisis. If there is a combination of a power failure and a heat wave, people could be dying within hours. City personnel need to be trained and assigned. Resiliency centers need to be staffed and need to have a police presence for security reasons. One of the most severe lessons of the climate-related disasters in the past decade is that local government has a tendency to overestimate its ability to manage information and control a crisis. As the Los Angeles area fires have shown recently, actual events demonstrate a breakdown in communication and civic order. And I might add that the most recent data is that city government delayed 2 hours in presenting and putting out evacuation orders, and that a lot of the catastrophe that occurred had to do with that delay. People don't panic because they have too much information. They panic because they do not have enough information. People have died in their homes or in last-minute traffic jams because of not receiving evacuation orders in time or not knowing where to go. The design phase of these public buildings is an excellent opportunity for City Council to actively guide city government to achieve some of the goals of the Climate Action and Resiliency Improvement Plan. I hope this issue will be assigned to committee for further study, and I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Does anyone have any questions? It's very interesting information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caitlin Elliott.
Hello, Caitlin Elliott, 219 Crim Street. I am here on behalf of the BG Climate Action Network, a task force group under the BG Song umbrella. Our members have been reading through the Climate Action and Resiliency Improvement Plan. Communities around the country are being faced with natural and man-made disasters. Extreme heat and cold, floods, and tornadoes are just a few of the potential hazards. We should be prepared to face those challenges here in Bowling Green. Given those risks and the ongoing work to improve our public safety facilities, we believe the new fire stations and remodeled police stations should be designed for use as resiliency centers. Resiliency centers can be utilized by the public in times of emergency. They can be used as warming and cooling centers, emergency shelters, or for food and water distribution. The time for action is now. The city has recently replaced the Veterans Building at City Park and the City Administration Building. Now we are contemplating new public safety facilities. It is more cost-effective to design for our future needs rather than try to retrofit in 10 years. These new buildings should be designed to withstand natural disasters and provide for the emergency needs of the community. Lives may depend on it. While we looked at this issue from a climate change resiliency perspective, the recent local emergency exercise involving a chemical spill also highlights the need to be prepared with facilities ready to go. We urge the City Council Transportation and Safety Committee or the Council Sustainability Committee to study and make recommendations on including resiliency centers in the siting and design of these new safety facilities and the remodeling of the police station before planning progresses. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's everyone for this evening.
Okay. That brings us to the introduction of new legislation.
Mr. President,
Ms. Phipps?
from the Planning, Zoning, and Economic Development Committee, I have an ordinance amending the zoning district map of the city of Bowling Green for approximately .307 acres at 416 West Wooster Street, parcel number B08-510-240411038000 from PR pedestrian residential to R2 medium density residential zoning.
That brings us to official reports. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, council. I have no report subject to any questions you may have.
Are there any questions for the mayor this evening?
Just one, if I may. We had a discussion some weeks ago now about the prospect of a resiliency centers being added to the fire stations. Obviously, those are in the very early stages of the planning process. Does the administration have any information to share at this time with regard to that?
Yeah, as you mentioned, we are still in the early stages of designing both new fire stations and the renovation of the police station. So I would say that at this point, we are not programming either one of those new facilities to function, as an official resiliency center. I would say that, although there are a number of the different components that are described in some of the information presented this evening that are under consideration in terms of sustainable design elements, tornado shelters inside those buildings. Those have been discussed and are currently being programmed into those buildings. Frankly, my thought at this point is those buildings just really aren't necessarily big enough from a square footage standpoint to accommodate large numbers of people. I would focus instead on existing agreements that we have with emergency management at the county level that creates operational programs or operational, I'm not really thinking what the word is. We have detailed plans for how we could utilize right now, utilize our community center in events of mass catastrophe or disaster scenarios. And that's been game planned several different times. In fact, the facility has been used for that purpose in different scenarios in town where there have been evacuations due to fires or gas leaks or that sort of thing. And that is an agreement that is in place with county EMA and is continuously reviewed and updated. I'm not ruling out the idea that further discussions could reveal opportunities to create some support functions in the new fire stations, but as we speak today, they are not necessarily being designed to serve that purpose as it has been described.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the mayor this evening? Okay, thank you. Ms. Tretter's not here. Anyone have any questions that they were planning on directing towards Ms. Tretter that perhaps Martha could help with or something? Okay. City Attorney, Mr. Brown.
Good evening. No report.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Brown this evening? Public Infrastructure Director, Mr. O'Connell.
Thank you. No report unless you have questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. O'Connell this evening? I have one question.
Sure.
This is an evening of very bizarre questions for me. Just so that it puts people's minds at ease because of the recent talk of tariffs. Some of our energy entering the United States comes from Mexico and Canada. And I was just wondering if you could speak to our energy profile and do we have any contracts with any entities that might be adversely affected by an increase in price?
Yeah, so I think the short answer is no. A large portion of our power supply is already hedged in contracts in existing resources that are not dependent upon transportation or delivery of fuel or energy supply from Canada or Mexico. Prairie State in Illinois and the hydro projects on the Ohio River don't have any resources that are tied to that trade. So I think there could be impacts to the oil that's transported from Canada into America. From what I've read in reports today, that could affect gasoline prices, but that doesn't really go into our electric prices. We're not really tied to any natural gas plants directly, so that again would not really impact us. We have a small amount that we do purchase from the market, maybe less than 10% typically. So that could be subject to any impacts that might be experienced in the electric market in general. That's a very small percentage of our overall electric purchases throughout the year. So I don't anticipate there'll be much change at all to our electric costs due to the tariffs.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Actually, I thought of one for Martha when you mentioned that. There was recent reporting that the city of Bowling Green had about $1.4 million in funding, primarily in the areas of housing and other grants. Do we have any news on that front in the last week or so?
Interestingly enough, we never got any notifications from HUD or from ODOT, we're a subrecipient for our FTA grant money. Never heard anything from them about the proposed ending of those subsidies. Didn't hear anything either from our company that handles the subsidized housing, Section 8 housing. Those three numbers from those three projects, CDBG, BG Transit, and Section 8, are what the bulk of that money was. So at this point, we're operating as usual. We requested a payment from ODOT. They're a reimbursement grant, and we've received that money this week.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. That brings us to council committee reports.
Mr. President,
Mr. Robinette.
the Finance Committee met and just prior to this meeting and received the 2024 year-end financial update from the Finance Director. There were no major issues.
Okay. Any other committee reports? All righty. That will bring us to the reading of legislation.
Legislation for first reading, ordinance number 9260 for first reading, ordinance amending the zoning district map of the city of Bowling Green for approximately .307 acres at 416 West Wooster Street, parcel number B08510, excuse me, 240411038000 from PR pedestrian residential to R2 medium density residential zoning.
Mr. President,
Ms. Phipps?
we need to set the required public hearing on this ordinance for March 17th at 6 o'clock.
St. Patrick's Day. All right.
Okay. Legislation for second reading. Resolution 3877 for second reading. Resolution authorizing the mayor of the city of Bowling Green, Ohio to enter into a programmatic agreement between the city of Bowling Green and the State Historic Preservation Office, formerly known as Ohio Historic Preservation Office, for the administration of activities funded by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and the Ohio Development Services Agency, formerly known as Ohio Department of Development. Ordinance number 9257 for second reading. Ordinance authorizing an agreement between the City of Bowling Green, Ohio, and the Wood County Regional Airport Authority.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Harold.
I just want to give a heads up to council that I may, after the third reading next meeting, I may make a motion to table this because of the possibility of scheduling a Transportation and Safety Committee meeting related to this and related to safety. So I just want to give you all a heads up. I might be doing that.
All right.
Ordinance 9258 for second reading. Ordinance amending and adopting Section 90.02 of the codified ordinances of the City of Bowling Green, Ohio regarding failure to confine animals. Ordinance number 9259 for second reading. Ordinance authorizing an additional temporary reduction and/or moratorium of certain residential construction fees. Legislation for third reading. Ordinance 9255 for third reading. Ordinance amending and adopting Chapter 121 of the codified ordinances of the City of Bowling Green, Ohio regarding rental dwelling registration.
Mr. President,
Ms. Phipps,
I move to adopt ordinance 9255.
Second.
properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President,
Ms. Phipps?
I have a quick question for Hunter. Hunter, do you have this in front of you?
Yes.
Okay, so, this ordinance makes some small changes throughout Chapter 121. I'm looking at 121.05A3, which
Yes.
administration is proposing to strike. We are going to have to clean up the and A2 right above that, but I'm wondering if you could tell us why A3 is,
Sure.
why it's changed.
So I would start by saying that many of the edits to this chapter came from Heather Saylor, who's the person who actually does, enacts this chapter. So I was texting her. You asked me this question beforehand, so I was texting her. And if I could summarize, so this is the section that says that the property owner is not delinquent in any payment to the city of fees, penalties, taxes. This is one of those sections, in my opinion, that you would see frequently in a chapter like this for many municipalities, but is also very clunky and difficult to actually enforce on a realistic level. There's a few reasons for that. Number one, it's kind of ambiguous as to what fees you're talking about. So if the person gets a speeding ticket, they owe $100 to the court, does that count? Like, what fees should we be searching for? It's also kind of confusing as to how often and to what level we're looking for these fees. As far as things like taxes, income tax, stuff like that, semi-private information, and the collection of it is very much behind in a temporal sense from when you're looking to enforce anything like this. So you might be, if you were going to do anything like that, it might be based on tax information from 2 years ago, So I think that's what she was looking at. I don't know that she was terribly attached to the removal of this section. I think just from a practicality standpoint, she feels it's pretty ambiguous and difficult to enforce.
So you think as it reads now, it's not clear that the fees, penalties, taxes, or other monies that property owner is delinquent on have to be tied to the property?
I mean, that's what it says. I guess I'd say should we be searching, somehow every month, every property? It's just kind of difficult on a realistic level to enforce. Again, this isn't my suggested removal. I'm just trying to summarize what she was telling me.
Okay,
I have a question.
sorry.
Could you read the line that is going to be struck?
Yeah, of course. I'm so sorry. So 121.05, that section is titled Self-Certification Inspection Program. And we're at the very top, which is subsection A. A rental housing property shall be approved for continuation of self-certification inspection if all of the following circumstances exist. And we're discussing 3. So Do you want me to keep reading?
No, just the one that they want to strike. So right now, a property owner has to be up to date on their taxes and
Penalties,
fees.
taxes, fees, or any other monies related to the property.
Or they would be subject to,
In order to remain in the self-certification program, in order to self-certify their inspection, they cannot be delinquent on any payment to the city of, quote, fees, penalties, taxes, or other monies related to the property.
so I like that idea.
Hunter?
I wasn't trying to interrupt, but I understand it says at the end, related to the property. I get that. There was just an appellate court case on this exact issue, whether or not that related to the property applies to all the modifiers before the commas. And
To our statute? With
no,
regard to-
no,
oh,
no,
okay.
completely different case, completely unrelated issue. But
Yeah, that's what
This-
I was
this
asking.
gets-
Sorry,
this-
Hunter.
this
I wonder,
gets in-
so you're wondering, you think this might be ambiguous, that we would get
Yes.
further afield
Yes.
than monies tied to the property? So
Yes.
instead of suggesting a change to make it clear, we're just going to strike it all.
so I think that was her suggestion based on the combination of the ambiguity along with the difficulty of enforcement.
Okay.
I can tell you more about that Supreme Court, or that is appellate court case later. It's very exciting, but there's an
the
affidavit
challenge-
from an English professor involved. I'm not kidding.
And I guess the challenge is that we have to vote on it sometime in the next several minutes. As much as I look forward to that conversation about the new,
So if you could share with me what other amendments are proposed?
This is, I'm just reading from the packet from 3 weeks ago. So there's, throughout chapter 121, the small changes are made throughout to clean some stuff up primarily. This is the only one that I was kind of scratching my head about.
If I could, again, I just want to say, I don't think anyone is terribly attached to leaving it in or removing it. It was just a suggestion based on a year or so of enacting this.
Any other discussion? So we're waiting for a motion?
Well,
Is that
I
what
mean,
Greg said?
Say, if you want to put it back in, I mean,
yeah, or add or take out a couple of words that make it less ambiguous.
I'm inclined to leave it in. I mean, I think it's a tool in the city's toolbox.
I also am inclined to,
So my motion would be to leave 121.05A3 as it currently reads.
I second that.
Okay, any other discussion on that?
no, I support that. If this becomes a problem down the road, we can amend it later if in
Jody?
practice it becomes a challenge.
Harold,
Yes.
Hollenbaugh,
Yes?
Musgrave,
Yes.
Odericio,
Yes.
Phipps,
Yes.
Robinette,
Yes.
Dennis.
yes.
Okay. So that motion passes. Any further discussion on ordinance 9255? Hearing none. We have a motion to adopt ordinance 9255 as amended. Jody?
Hollenbaugh,
Yes.
Musgrave,
Yes.
Odericio,
Yes.
Phipps,
Yes.
Robinette,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Harold.
Yes.
All right, ordinance 9255 is adopted as amended. Is there any other business to come before council this evening? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.